We'll start with a round of introductions, and I would ask each of you to say your name, where you're from, what made you want to come on this program.
My name is Andy. I am from Westchester County, New York. My grandparents escaped from Leipzig during the war, and my other grandfather was a Holocaust survivor out of Buchenwald, so the history and the purpose of this trip is deeply meaningful to me.
I would say I'm really interested in architecture and urban planning and understanding how those can act as like memorials for a city's history.
Hi, I'm Gabe Perlow from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I'm also a board member of Classrooms Without Borders, and I think it's crucially important to support our mission to really understand how these types of trips can impact the educators and young people.
Now is probably one of the most relevant times to go since the program started, considering everything that's happening. Yeah, looking forward to meeting a lot of different people from different backgrounds.
My grandfather was a prisoner of war in Germany and didn't talk about it for 50 years and eventually did. So I've heard a lot of his story, but I've never been to Germany. This is my first time, so it's really meaningful to be here.
They sell every sausage from whole Germany, so 1,000 different kinds of sausage.
This is an Orthodox synagogue. You can see there's a mechitza here, but the women still feel that they are part of the service.
Seeing a synagogue in Munich is really interesting because it seems to be a statement to the whole city, the municipality, that Jews are still here.
You can all come closer. You can kiss the.
Some of the Sefer Torahs,
I think the oldest is maybe 70 years.
Also hearing who comes to the synagogue, that it's an Orthodox rabbi, but most of the people here are not necessarily religiously observant, but they want to have the tradition that their grandparents had. And that's really interesting and an interesting message of unity, I guess.
One of the major tasks of this place is to give people back their faces, to give them back their lives. And that memorial site was established on the day of the liberation.
When did Germany kind of officially start acknowledging and memorializing the Holocaust specifically, and not just general Nazi atrocities?
Young students in the late 60s asking their parents and their grandparents, where have you been, what have you done? But actually it took still more than 20 years. I think a breakthrough was the 1980s, and then ever since, these stories also made it into the education system, into literature, into media, into popular films. Me, as a gay man, I would have fallen into that category because a homosexual identity was criminalized, and I could have ended up in category with a green triangle or in the category of the pink triangle.
Looking at history textbooks, we see pictures of concentration camps and they're always in black and white, and we know about these harsh winters, and it was really impactful to go on like a beautiful summer day and see actually just how much greenery there was and that there were flowers growing, and that felt really kind of like hard to wrap my head around because it was so different than what I had known.
What I'm really stuck thinking about is how, like, a whole generation across the board, both perpetrators and survivors, just kind of fell into silence about their experiences. And as someone who's like the third, fourth generation past the Holocaust, there is not a single moment in my life that I can remember not talking about this.
I'm feeling my family in the room a lot today, and something that I found just like so eerie but so powerful, liberating was were walking through Dachau and were able to leave.
It wasn't just some theory in a textbook anymore that you read about. It was real life. You're hit by the raw emotions.
May this be a place, a resting place of peace, and let us all say,
And early on, our guide said that the audience was for residents of Munich, not for outsiders. It wasn't displaying something like in the past. It was like meticulously documenting how the Nazis came to power. For a society to create that for its own students and for its own members to view takes a lot of courage.
"50,000 people should come here in order to listen to Hitler's speeches. And the task he gave a local architect was, please build a Colosseum for me. It should be 1.5 times as big as the Colosseum." He knew that people need some kind of cult. He wanted to give them rituals.
The basic ideals of Nazi architecture was to take Greek and Roman architectural ideology, but to completely skew it and warp it to make the human, like the individual, feel small. So this was a stage for Hitler. It feels really empowering that I'm back here and I'm standing exactly where he stood and I'm Jewish, where he preached these ideas of eliminating people like me, like all of us.
We are in Nuremberg, and it really is a beautiful old medieval town.
visiting the courthouse in Nuremberg was pretty cool. They had actually renovated the space, torn down a wall, that the people that would be sitting there would be 300 journalists. So as someone who is a journalist, I thought it was really, really cool how much respect and trust was placed in journalists, and just to ensure that people know what the story is, to understand this is what happened.
We're standing in front of the Reichstag. That's the name of this very important building. This building was built when Germany was founded 150 years ago.
It feels like a very odd contrast of like there's all these old buildings, but it's also a very modern feeling.
I'm looking here on three stones of the family Davidson. Adolf and Paula with these years of birth, and Uri. So I can assume that these are the parents and this is their son, Uri, that was born in 1943. And in that same year, deported with his parents on the same deportation to Auschwitz. There they were murdered. Now that you see these things on the floor, you start seeing them more and more and more.
I'm happy to see the hostage signs here on the synagogue. I think in some places in the US it's hard to even do this on synagogues that are in the public sphere, so I think that that's important. It's hard to think that people would come here and make a Jewish life and still face threats when there's so much effort and education done to try to prevent anything like that happening again.
We're at the Frankfurter Synagogue in Berlin, which is a Masorti synagogue.
about to head in for Kabbalat Shabbat services, and we just helped put up some of the hostage posters. And one of the ones that happened to be in my hand was for Hirsch Goldberg Poland, and his family belonged to the synagogue that I have friends who belong to, and I've been there several times.
Already feels like home, you know, just walking up and talking to people here. You know, it's meaningful to me that, you know, after everything that's gone on here, that there's still a active Jewish community.
We are here at the Wannsee Villa in this beautiful, beautiful location. On January 1942, 15 SS men, high-ranking, decided on the final solution. It's really hard to take.
I think the banality of how bureaucratic it actually was is what's pretty incredible. It was an hour and a half long. They took notes. The formality of it is pretty chilling.
To be here feels strange, a little creepy, but it's also a really interesting part of the remembrance culture that we have been learning about. Creating spaces like this is only something that happened in the past 30 years. This is maybe just the beginning.
This is a really beautiful place, and really horrible things happened here. And I think that has been such a theme for me in this trip.
In 10 days, you really get a wonderful perspective. You meet Germans, you feel safe to ask questions, you have fun.
I think the group was really meaningful, and I think that the trip was structured to show a range of Germany and a range of perspectives.
The most important thing on this trip for me is to see how the 28 participants that we brought starting to think what they need to do to fight hate and anti-Semitism and be proactive.
Take that duty very seriously as a history teacher. Like, how do you make sure this never happens again?
I think it's an interesting juxtaposition to learn about the society and learn about the history, and then go out and see how that history is still present in the day-to-day.
I've been introduced to some really wonderful people and learned a tremendous amount.